I interpret happiness as being basically getting what you want. You have expectations, and then sometimes, on rare occasions, the universe conforms to your expectations, and then you feel happy about it. Bliss is something completely different. Bliss is an eternal state. In fact, everyone's already in bliss. I mean, the great secret that many people don't want the public to know is that everyone is already enlightened. I'm very, very clear about that. Everyone is already in a blissful state. They are fully evolved beings. They are, in fact, divine beings. They are in contact with the universe, so there is no separation. The problem is that people do not get the benefits of that natural state because of debris, blockages, the accumulation of heavy, distorted fields within their own field, what we call the energy field, or the subtle field of energy and consciousness. So there's no mystery to this work. As a matter of fact, when people come to me, I usually bring them into bliss very quickly and show this is available to you. I did not do this to you. All I did was remove some of the blockages out of the way so you could consciously get the benefit of it. Now you begin the hard work of removing those blockages permanently. Enough of them so that you can experience that continuously without my intervention. Yeah, of course. We already have, I believe, 14 people who are in bliss continuously. And I've been working, doing this work specifically in this way for about 16 years. And before that, I did healing and I did energy work, but not with the primary goal of helping people to achieve personal liberation. I decided to change the orientation of my work when I believed that the Kali Yuga, which is an epoch of time that is talked about in yoga, came to its lowest point, which means that from that moment on, the universe was supporting the work of enlightenment for people. And this is very important. That's like having the wind behind you instead of having the wind in front of you. It was much easier from this point on for people to achieve the goal, their spiritual goals. And from that point on, I began working with people. And I think it's been proven that it is easier now. People who really are highly motivated can achieve this goal. And we see it every day because the people I work with are not Brahmins, they're not living in ashrams, isolated from the rest of the world, not living in caves, meditating and eating tofu continuously. They're regular people with jobs in the community, with families, with kids, and these people are able to sustain their bliss in all the natural and normal activities of life. Well, the ancient yogic maxim is that the teacher appears when the student is ready. I don't consider myself even a teacher or a guru or anything like that. I just facilitate. I was born in a state of bliss. I've remained in a state of bliss with the skills I have. And I see my work as simply helping people who are ready to joyfully continue the work towards self-realization. My orientation is that I see people for what they really are, blissful beings, eternal beings, and I have a natural respect for their intelligence, so I give them certain parameters that are very important in this work, and if they meet those simple conditions, it resonates that this is appropriate work for them, then I begin working with them. I think that many spiritual traditions take the responsibility away from people and put it on an outside authority, like someone, if you believe this, then you're saved. If you believe this, then you're cured. I don't believe in any of that. I believe that you're fully responsible for your condition and you're fully responsible to enhance your condition. Mostly in our process, we work together, we do seminars together where we work as groups. And most of the time, I leave it to the person themselves to bring up the issues that are important to them. Because in this universe we live in, timing is extremely important. A person has to be ready to give up an attachment. You cannot force them to give up an attachment. And if you try, you're only going to create more strife and disharmony. This doesn't work. In the same way that a person has to voluntarily come to this work, I can't drag them into the work. I can't force them to be motivated. In the same way, you can't force someone to give up something that has, they believe has been useful for them, has helped them survive, has given them pleasure. So most of the time, I leave it to the person themselves. On occasion, I'll bring up a subject if I believe it's having a particularly negative effect on the person and inhibiting them from doing the work properly. And then I'll see how they respond to that. If suddenly it looks like they're ready to deal with it, then we go with it. If not, we just talk about it and leave it for the time being and wait for that person to assimilate the information and get ready to give up the attachment or whatever, go through the crisis they have to go through. And then I will give them accurate information and help them through that process. Yeah, relationships are a very strong indicator of whether a person has a good sense of who they are. Many people make bad decisions, pick the wrong partners, disrupt their own relationships, sabotage them, because they're not clear on what's good for them or what's appropriate for them. Appropriate's the right word here. The important point here is that you are never outside of relationship. You are in relationship with divine consciousness which exists within you. Your sense of bliss emerges when you recognize that you are in union with divine consciousness. Now, when we're talking about divine consciousness, or universal consciousness, we're talking about the consciousness from which everything emerged, that permeates the physical and non-physical universe. In the same way that the dreamer is in relationship to the people in his dream at night, you are in relationship with a consciousness through which the entire universe that we know, a multiverse that we know, emerged. And once you reestablish that relationship consciously, or recognize it, remember it, you go into bliss. There is no bliss when you are a separate island. Bliss is a form of union. It's a form of deep spiritual intimacy. I call that transcendent relationship. A relationship is a wonderful tool for self-realization, because if you can experience intimacy with your partner, this is very close to intimacy with universal consciousness. It's one small step beyond human intimacy. Well, sex, again, is a strong indicator of your condition. Sex produces a huge amount of energy. And if your energy is blocked, especially your non-physical energy, what we call prana or chi or ki, whatever you want to call it, that strongly tells you and tells your partner, and it would tell me if we talked about it, how blocked your subtle energy field is. And so sex, your relationship to sex, or your relationship to your sexuality and to the activity of sex, is a very strong indicator about where you are as an energetic being. And yoga is very clear about this. It stresses that Shakti brings you to Shiva. So Shakti represents subtle energy, Shiva represents consciousness. Bliss is a form of consciousness, but it's energy, enhanced energy that flows without restriction, that brings you to the point where you shift into the state of bliss, or the recognition that you are a conscious being, and then your bliss becomes permanent. So we try to clean up your sexual act. Okay, I don't get involved in your sexual act. However, sexuality is part of the human experience, and a very, very important part. The most common is distraction. The world is here to consistently distract you from your spiritual work. There are minor distractions like your iPhone and your tablet and your, YouTube and this and that, texting. And then there are major distractions in which you're drawn into distorted fields of energy and get into your own personal patterns of anger, dependency, arrogance, self-sabotage, confusion. When we get really to the crux of the problem, it was said most succinctly by Patanjali more than 1,000 years ago. He said, yoga is stilling the waves of the mind. Yoga, meaning union or intimacy, okay, requires that the waves of energy that produce thoughts and distorted feelings, distorted emotions that are not natural to humans, like jealousy and envy. We've been taught to believe that these are normal human emotions. They are really not. A real master does not feel jealousy or envy or disappointment or resentment. That's impossible. Those are fields of energy that intrude upon a human's energetic field. Now the master sees them as waves and by recognizing their waves, he rejects them and therefore rejects thought. So the master's mind cannot be distracted simply because the master is not thinking. He observes, or she observes, till he or she knows and gets all knowledge from insight and direct experience of fields of energy and consciousness. So most people are distracted because they're using their mind in a very strange and distorted way. And they've been trained to do that. The society trains them to do that from early childhood. But in fact, the human mind is not programmed to work that way. That's malware. That's a false programming. And that's why it takes a little bit of time to achieve a state of permanent bliss, because anything that you do over and over again creates a rut in your own mind. It's very difficult to deviate from that, okay? So it takes time, it takes practice, it takes patience, but with motivation, you can change how your mind is functioning. Little by little, step by step, you gain control again of your mind. Self-realization is not perfection. You are already perfect. Whether you get the benefit of that perfection, well, that's an open question. But you can come closer and closer to that. And you can go make the shift into bliss. And that changes everything. Because when you are in bliss, suffering ends. There is no suffering anymore. And that is a significant change for a person.